Hi, Alex.
Hey,
Hi,
hey,
Chanjan.
Hey guys.
Great to
hey there.
see you here. Hi, everyone. We are going to wait for just a couple of minutes for everybody to join. Welcome to those who are joining. Welcome to this panel on the state of AI in blockchain indexes. Tonight, we're digging into how AI is reshaping on-chain data, whether it is actually needed in on-chain data, and whether we need to speed up the development of AI agents, MCPs, and other stuff like that in blockchain indexes. So while we are waiting for everybody to join, how are you guys? What are you? How is it going?
Great. I I mean, on my side, I just refueled with a Pret sandwich, so feeling refreshed and ready to go. Can't complain.
Sounds good. What about you, Alex?
Well, I also just refueled with a sandwich, and so that makes two of us. Yeah, and we're ready to go. Yeah,
Nice. Carbs are the best, aren't they?
carbs and
Can't
coffee.
go wrong with a carb.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. 1 more minute to start. But since we are all here, well, let me just give a bit of background, a bit of context here. Web3 data is a very complex kind of data to use in AI since it's not semantic, it's not words, it doesn't give you much context. So it's kind of like radio static from which you need to extract meaning and organize it. And this is where indexes come in. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but indexes are very much like these translators from radio static that we have in blockchains to apps that get the data in a readable form. And for AI, this means that, even if it's not semantic, it can be streamlined and can be organized with AI as well.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, to maybe drive the point home, I think some way I like to also describe it as, with blockchains, we have lots of different applications deploying on these chains, and because they're these public ledgers, all of the information is kind of muddled amongst all the other information. Everything is just mixed together, right? It's like you have one business on a blockchain, but it's scattered amongst many other businesses' information. And indexing is really just this way to kind of take out often the data that you care about that relates to your use case. And it's a bit like a needle in a haystack problem. The data you care about is the needle, and it's scattered amongst all these other things in this haystack. And, it's just that process of finding and taking that data you care about out so that you can use it. And as we all know with data, there's many ways to sift through that haystack, and there's many ways to skin the cat.
Exactly. And this is where such amazing projects as Envio and sqd come in. So today we are here in an amazing company joined by John, a co-founder of Envio, and Alex, a DevRel from sqd. So could you say a few words about yourselves, guys, and give us a short preview of what you're working on at the moment? Maybe we could go all in from the start. If you could tell us what's the hardest data problem you're tackling this quarter, maybe this year.
Yeah, I can start. So sqd is a decentralized data lake. It's a network of workers that completely distributed. So we store about 3 petabytes of data, and there's like a lot of redundancies happening. And we also provide indexes, so you can basically stream this data from this network to yourself. So it's basically a distributed data set service, right? So we have Solana, we have Ethereum, all these other chains, and it's basically a way for you to ingest on-chain data. Yeah, and I think the hardest problem we're solving right now is Solana data and just data in general, like faster chains. And I think you guys, Envio as well, also solving this problem. So like the faster chains they're getting, because it's not just an indexing problem, it's also like a database problem, right? So it's got lots of layers. So yeah, I'll let you take that one.
Awesome. Yeah, quick one from my side. Yeah, I'm John. I'm at Envio, and we have a fast multi-chain indexing framework, a hyperindex that teams use to build indexes. And yeah, as we talked about, basically what that's doing is allowing you to extract the information you care about, doing it in a quick way, and also, concerning ourselves with how does that developer experience look like to get up and get that going. And yeah, I think a lot of the yeah, I mean, as Alex mentioned, there's always hard problems to be solved, and they never stop. But I guess just one interesting uh, problem we working on looking to solve is just making it easier to get started. It can honestly, this stuff can be quite intimidating. How to set things up, how to just get that first foot in the door. So just working on that developer experience and trying to make sure it's easy to get started when it can often be overwhelming for a developer.
Are you also by any chance dealing with the problems of Solana data as Alex?
Yeah, I will say Solana is for sure a beast, and it's something we look into, and there's some work going on there, and it's definitely really really tough. So can echo that sentiment.
But what do you think makes Solana data so specific that it's so hard to deal with?
I can just drop a few points first, and I would say obviously there is a lack of availability of Solana data. So, for example, on Ethereum, because the ledger is so much smaller, you can actually just go and query like historic data. With Solana, often there's just too much. It's just so much data, and it's not really readily available. So, like to construct a custom data set from Solana data is actually a big engineering challenge, and yeah, and Solana just has a few Solana specific quirks. So like we're currently running a beta for Solana archive, and I was running like an indexer that was going all the way to Genesis, and like sometimes it just breaks, like some code that you wrote, because on Ethereum, like I expect consistency. But with Solana, sometimes you just kind of like you have to kind of like really study the chain and like historic presence, and you're like, okay, so we need to do some stuff there. So a lot of providers, what they do, they actually drop some of the Solana data, so they just provide you like a subset of data. So this is kind of how they mitigate this problem. But I think it's really important for people to get like a full history, ideally, and but yeah, I mean, obviously, like if a subset of data solves your problem, then that's also understandable. It's just big data, when the faster you get, the more you have to like think outside the box. Sometimes you even have to think, okay, if I don't need this data, then what do I need, etc. So yeah, that's why there's like this fragmentation, the indexing layer for like when it comes to like these fast chains, and it's yeah, I mean, for the user it's not ideal, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly like John said, it's like a needle in the stack, and you don't really have to have the whole tracing of all the transactions to get that needle. You just need to know where to look. And moving to AI, we can bookmark that, and I'll unpack it a bit later in the deep dive. But now I'd like to move to AI and ask you, how far are we from getting these clean contextual answers about blockchain data? When no code is needed, or when indexer understands your question and finds the right data right away. Goes right to the needle.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm happy to give a little bit of an answer. I think, yeah, we'll both have good insights here. I'm also excited to hear what Alex has to say. But basically, I think that's AI is to be honest, it's a really broad word, and there's AI in so many different parts of indexing. You can use AI to help you build an indexer. You can use AI to help you make queries to already index data. You can, yeah, there's like all these interesting facets around it. I know there's quite a lot of interesting, tools where in natural language you can ask, who's the biggest token holder, XYZ, and basically what the LLM does is it constructs that natural language query into basically an API call that might hit, I don't know, the hypersync server or squid data lake or something like that and try get you that answer. So I think that's one common approach to maybe ask LLMs to get you that answer. But yeah, I think it's still also, I mean, often, yeah. Let me stop there. Actually, Alex, what is your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think I would say that we are at the yeah, I think we're at the right place philosophically towards solving this natural language to AI, just AI response, accurate AI response path. Because like for example, if you just use a plain RPC, there's no way you can have a system where you can query it. Like you always have to build something custom to design a more complex system. Sure, you can achieve some of these things, but as you go into like Solana, or if you want multi-chain queries, you're not gonna. It's just gonna be extremely almost impossible, I would say, just out of the box to do it with an RPC. So I would say we're definitely on the way. So you could sit down, you could take one of our data sets and design a system where you have like a custom thing that you can query, or maybe you can you could build a system where you could train your model. Not if you have a natural language model on some of this data, it wouldn't always be accurate, but you can achieve something like this, or you can design like John said, build the query, just ask it like, hey, can you give me this information based on the data set that I have. But yeah, blockchain data, especially when the size increases, is just going to be harder and harder to achieve these things just as a natural like interface. I think we will need some kind of like layer to access this information but yeah, I mean, it's I think it's up to users to decide how they want to index the data, what kind of product they want to build, and ultimately it's up to them to design these flashed out systems. We just want to provide like the tools for them to build the indexer that they kind of want to use to build these systems. Yeah, so for example, we do have a few AI products that are kind of ingesting the data, and they're like training custom classifier models and such. So yeah, and we've seen the results. The results are pretty great, but I mean, they use it for trading mainly. But I would say there's a lot of opportunities in just language, storytelling, not just trading.
Yeah, but you're saying that basically indexes are B2B solutions, and data readability and interaction with LLM-friendly schemas should be dealt with on another layer, maybe on the app side. And indexes should concentrate on maybe performance and optimizing speed and other things like on infra level.
So I think here's my take on that. I think right now, if you still do want to generally have a usable system, imagine you are building this big prediction market protocol, right? And you want to show your users, the leaderboard, who's bet the most, who's won the most, etc. When you're building that application, you're not going to, in your back end, write a natural language query and say, hey, can you give me like the top 10 betters, and then send that off, and then something's going to go try find it. It's just having that data indexed and having a system to access that data seems like a much more logical solution. But to build that index or that system out, that's where I think AI can help basically improve the speed at which you're able to build that. If you're using an indexer framework to actually build that, previously you would have to maybe do a lot more manual coding to actually get all of that right. But now with AI and LLMs, it becomes a lot quicker to essentially create all that logic to say, okay, someone made a bet, let me get this user, add the amount they've betted, save that to my database so I can query it. So I think what it really just does is it allows you to build some of these data tools much quicker, and that just is nice from a developer perspective, because this person who's building the sports market, they're having the smart contracts, they got to focus on the front end, and they kind of just want the data easily accessible. They don't want to spend all their time on that part of it. So that's maybe my thought, where AI is helping quite a bit, as opposed to just going out and finding you the answers. It's maybe more helping you build the data stack or tool to then help you find the answers, is kind of what I'm seeing, I think.
Yeah. So do you see the AI move being driven more by Web3 developers and the apps themselves, which demand simpler, more powerful, query and agent interfaces sometimes? Or do you see that as a sort of a push that is being driven by cloud and off-chain data firms like AWS, bringing their tooling and expectations over into the on-chain world?
Do you want to take this one?
You go for it, Alex.
All right, sounds good. It's I don't know. It's an interesting question. I so here's what I kind of think. I don't think there's a huge expectation from these companies towards the blockchain world. I think what's interesting, there is more off-chain data being stored on-chain. That's true. There is a huge, so especially if you look at AI data, so large language models obviously super popular these days. And what are large language models? They're text, right? And the best way to store text in a DeFi world is something like IPFS and all these other solutions. So from that point of view, yeah, indexing you can use indexing to index all these off-chain all this off-chain data. And I totally agree. Like just interacting with AI and all these things, they're very kind of off-chain centric things. AI in of itself, like there isn't much decentralized AI happening right now. It's mainly OpenAI and people using the API calls to all these larger models, all these providers to basically get this data, and sometimes they store it on chain, sometimes they do other things with this. If you look at the agent platforms and such, a lot of this stuff is just like text, right? So yeah, I think so. One of the things actually, like for example, with sqd and Envio, I believe off-chain, getting this off-chain data is very straightforward. So while you're indexing, you might make these API calls, put them into your database, and do further processing, further AI training, further AI things. It is actually quite an interesting debate actually, because if you go through like all the different indexing solutions, what you'll find is some people are very much against off-chain calls, as in they will let you do off-chain calls, but it's very, very like deterministic. Like they insist on forcing like their way of calling, making off-chain calls and getting this data. This is how you're supposed to do it. If you do it any other way, that's like wrong, because you're going against the framework. Whereas like what's interesting about like subsquid for us is that we make sure that we don't force these rules onto people. So if you want to make off-chain calls, you can go and make them from an indexing loop if you wanted to, right? Or just whatever. If you don't need hardcore, like strong determinism, you don't have to. Or if you want it, you can program it afterwards, right? You can program it in to the indexer. So I feel like for AI applications, it's really important to kind of justify, especially when the things are just so all over the place. Like there's just a lot of development happening here, then ERC 8004 is happening here, right? And you don't know, like there isn't much protocolization happening. There's a lot of discussion, but not a lot of protocols. Like firmly, this is what the industry is using now. So for that, it's nice to be able to have freedom to just kind of try all these things out, I would say.
Yeah. Do you agree, John?
Yeah, I think I broadly agree. I guess I'll chat a bit on the external API calls and what you're talking with there. I think most people do want to bring in and combine sort of off-chain and on-chain information for whatever their end use case might be, and it's something we've seen frequently. And we're also in a camp where we don't want to kind of restrict that in a framework and make it too cookie cutter so people feel like there's no flexibility. We did kind of, however, we do have a kind of a suggested path for making those external API calls using something called our effects API, and that's purely kind of performance related. We want to make sure that those external API calls aren't performance blocking in your indexing process. But essentially, I think you get the index data, and again, to me, this is where I think AI is extremely broad. It's like, are you training a model on all the index data you're getting? Are you using AI models to make queries to your index data? Are you using AI to help improve your indexer? Like AI and blockchain data, there's so many different ways, and I think it's being used so much all over the place. I think the reason we talk about it so much is because we're using it literally in every single way. Like I can often be, too lazy these days to write a SQL query that I would normally just write. And now I just say, blah, 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 like give me this query, and bang, it does that for me. Maybe the same for writing a handler. Normally when I'd index something, and now just blah, 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 do this for me. And it's just happening, I think, at every single level. Like it's happening more and more and more. And then there's, MCPs and these rules and that. And it's like not quite clear maybe yet what the best use cases are and how best to use it. And it's all like quite fun and nascent right now. And I think we're looking to incorporate it more and more. But that's at least my experience, just using it all over all the time, helping improve a lot of developer experience for sure. But I will say we haven't yet maybe gone down massively the route of let's now train models with all of this data that we have. So I do think that's, a very interesting thing to consider too. And I know Alex mentioned, I think they're doing it for recommending tokens and interesting cases like that. So there's just so many ways, I guess, you can think of AI and blockchain data. Honestly, there's so many different ways, and it's quite fun. There's tons of ways to experiment with it, to help it get you the insights, to help it to build you the tools to get the data. So that's I think what excites me. It's everywhere.
Yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to add something to that. I believe Envio is so Envio is Node.js based, right? So the nice thing about that, because subsquid was also very much Node.js centric, is yeah, so it's, you can pretty much, use any of your favorite libraries to kind of explore it. Where you look at a lot of indexers, especially all the generation of indexes, they are very much performance first, right? They pick a stack which is kind of very limiting to make sure that is performance first. But I also feel like the performance optimization is kind of like in the wrong place in some ways as well. Whereas I personally feel like for playing with AI, I would rather pick up, like Envio or sqd, and just kind of go, just hack the framework a little bit, just, to achieve these things that I want to achieve, especially like we mentioned for chain calls. And yeah, so because it's a Node.js environment, you can kind of like, there's a huge variety of libraries that you can basically use to uh, access the web. So I feel like it's just such a natural thing to do. You don't need another external tool to do this. You can just do it straight from your index. And yeah, like John said, you can use AI to just kind of like say, hey, a program, add this thing for me. I want to access like this OpenAI thing. Can you do this for me? Well, add documentation, add docs, paste a bunch of docs together, and then this thing just figures it out, and you just vibe code it away, basically. Yeah, I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and did I hear correctly that you think that performance shouldn't be one of the most important metrics, or something not that important to concentrate on?
I would say performance. Here's the thing. There are performance optimizations that I personally feel like, some people optimize. They pick a language which is not as accessible to optimize performance in kind of like that environment, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's still totally completely fine. I just think for a developer, and I come from just kind of hacking building background, and for me I was always like, for example, you look at subgraphs. Why do people like subgraphs? For example, is the first starting point is they're pretty simple, they're accessible, and obviously they've been around for a while. But it's JavaScript, like it's assembly script, but it looks like TypeScript, and people, people feel familiar. People think that, okay, this fits into our stack, and you can see there is definitely like a lot of heritage coming from that, right? So handlers obviously are very familiar to people, and but the thing is, it just because it's using assembly script doesn't mean it's the fastest, right? So if you want a really fast performance, for example, the sqd SDK is insanely fast. Envio guys, you have a very fast platform as well. So you have something where you have a better, more options to explore, a more exploratory experience for building AI applications, and you have basically, there are things that seem simple, and it's a nice starting point. But as you kind of build your application, you realize that the limitations have been basically they've been limitations imposed to optimize in the wrong areas. Basically, it's limiting now. But
Okay.
right, hopefully that makes sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to ask Envio, John, what's the difference between hyperindex and hypersync, and how do you guarantee these low latency streams? Basically, how is Envio so fast?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I know there's a lot of hyper words, and I think it's a bit confusing to a lot of people. But just the TLDR is hyperindex is kind of like the whole indexing framework. So it kind of includes the database and this and that, and it's kind of like, you imagine if you want something with like all the batteries included, and this is how it ships and this is how it's packaged. So it's still quite flexible, but it does impose like a few constraints. This is what the package looks like, this is the database and how it's used, blah 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 blah. So that's kind of hyperindex, and hypersync is kind of more like the data source where it's requesting data from. And that's a lot more flexible, but it's a bit more bare bones. So if you wanted to use that, you have to like handle things like reorgs yourself and all of these other things that are handled for you. So yeah, that's just kind of the distinction. I think most people generally would use hyper index if they're wanting to find the data for their protocol, or if they have like a more, say, custom use case, so they're wanting to build something a bigger, something like that, then maybe they would look at hypersync. And yeah, I think Alex touched on it a bit already, but yeah, part of the performance thing, I think both of us have agreed on it, but there can be fundamental limitations throughout the indexing process that slows things down. And I think we all agree getting fast is nice, because developers they don't like waiting and taking time. So you try optimize everywhere, from reading to databases, writing to databases, processing. Like, there's a whole lot of lists of it, but one of those parts that often does take quite a lot of time is like the data source, like kind of scanning and finding the data you care about. So I think that's also something we try to pay a lot of attention to make it quicker to be able to find the logs that you care about, so that they can then be pulled in and processed and things like that. So yeah, hopefully all the hypers aren't too confusing, but yeah, hyperindex is kind of like the indexer, and hypersync's a bit more like the data source.
Yeah, well, it's like a staple suffix, prefix, hyper. You think of Envio, it's hyper something.
Yeah, and then now there's hyper EVM and everything to
right.
confuse us. So,
Well, you're actually the ones behind Hyperliquid as well.
yeah, exactly.
Sorry. Yeah, just a joke. And
anyways.
yeah. Alex, and you've been working on light indexes. Is that a hyper version of Subsquid as well? Is it a fast indexer? That's why it's called light. And how do you use it together with streams and data lakes to help build AI agents?
Sorry, which one? What's the name?
Light indexes. And I was wondering, how you use that with the data lakes.
So to kind of like, so we have actually very similar, just to kind of give an overview. But I shouldn't use an RPC, but but the bottom line is I mean, Envio and us, we kind of have realized that if you don't stream from an RPC directly, and you have a custom, basically, a data set, then you can increase the performance massively. They're obviously, like, it's just a simple overview, but there are huge optimizations that we do behind the scenes. But the bottom line is, I strongly suggest trying out other solutions other than having RPC as your ingestion point. And that's kind of the basis of how we kind of achieve this performance. And what this actually means is that now that you've got this like incredible performance that can sync Solana, you have data consistency, you have all these other benefits, you can design indexers on top of it. So hypersync and hyperindex, they're kind of like separate things, right? They're separate processes. And so you could very much do the same thing with us. You have the data lake, which is the network where you can stream the data at a very fast rate, and then you can have an indexer. And an indexer can be anything you want. So we have the Squid SDK. We have Soldoxer that recently came out for, is just basically the Squid SDK is very similar to a lot of the usual indexing loop, right? It's, I guess it's quite similar to your indexer as well, and it's quite similar to subgraphs. If you kind of familiarize with subgraphs, you can use this, but instead of handling each event, we do batch handling. So we basically take it a step lower. So you can, if you want to use handlers, you can kind of program this stuff in. So we're kind of like a little bit more unopinionated about this part. So if it's like if you want to build a custom indexer, you can use this as the baseline to build like a custom thing on top of it. And the Soldexer, what's interesting about it is we literally just stripped everything and we just gave people like pipes. We just like streaming. We're like, okay, you can stream the data in, and you can basically design pipes, which basically pick the data sources that they want and then stream them in to that project. It's also kind of like if you want to design an index around it, go for it kind of thing. Yeah, so I think this is kind of like at the point when you separate the data source and the indexing layer, then you can basically achieve, like you can build some really cool things. I mean, you can even take Envio's data source, right? You can take Subspace data source. You can mix them together. You can build custom indexes in just both of us if you wanted to, right? You can. That could also be pretty cool. Yeah. So yeah, I would say that's kind of like the power of kind of like these custom data set interfaces and indexers.
Yeah, how realistic is this modular approach to using different kinds of parts of data indexes in one solution? For example, we take GraphQL and we we take a hyper index, and then to use the data, and then we put a light index on top from subsquid. Do you see it as the next step in the evolution?
Maybe it won't be the next step, but I think it's exciting. As Alex says, like, these things are possible, and there's a lot of interesting solutions and ways to compose things together, and that can be useful for who knows what probably use cases we haven't even thought about. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I think we've both seen lots of interesting things being built, from weird analytics engines, block explorers, like all kinds of things that can benefit from these interesting mixtures parts. So yeah.
And what's the best use case? Maybe not AI use case, but AI use case is welcome. You've seen built on top of your indexes.
I mean, the most relevant one, I guess, would be sqd.gen. It's basically a platform. It's like a social platform for like which it trains on the it trains on like a custom data set that's streamed from the using subsquid. It's actually using yeah, I don't remember which indexes they use, but it's like a combination of indexes, and they stream the data in, and they train on this data, and then they basically provide cool information. So that's kind of like I think this is like an interesting use case, which is kind of like relevant for the AI. I've seen some really kind of like interesting applications. I think what I find most exciting when it comes to subsquid is just like people building like really custom crazy stuff. It's just like people always go to like an indexing provider, and they may be asking, hey, can you do this, and this, right? And oftentimes like the last 2% of, hey, we can't really do this. This is like totally going to break our thing. That's when they're like, okay, well, they come to us. They're like, can you do this? I'm like, we're like, okay, yeah, you can do this crazy thing if you wanted to. You can vibe code it if you want, right? Yeah, so I would say, yeah, I think we see crazy stuff all the time being done with indexers. But yeah, I always love seeing like new AI applications. It's always really, really cool.
Yeah, what about you, John?
Yeah, sorry, my audio cut off. I think you would have seen I was gone for a second, so I missed that. I literally just can hear you now again. So can you repeat that question? Sorry, I completely missed it.
I was wondering what are the best use cases you've seen built on top of your indexes. It doesn't have to be AI use cases, but of course, that's interesting as well.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I think there's lots of just like this works, which is great. Protocols, they're bread and butter. Applications are just working. So maybe I won't talk about like ones that are just really helpful and work, but I'll talk about maybe some quirky ones that are just like fun and interesting to check out. And yeah, these are actually just some things I've built in the last couple of weeks. So I know it's quite lame me just giving myself a shout out here, but these are maybe interesting to see. Yeah, one is called lico.xyz, and it's just showing liquidations across different protocols on different chains, and it's just I thought quite interesting to see in real time, like how often are liquidations actually happening, which protocols are they happening on, which chains are they happening on. So yeah, that's an interesting one. Another interesting one is called chain density, and I think like in indexing, often it's quite difficult to know how big is my indexing task, right? Because generally your indexing task most of the time is like, how many logs am I going to index? Like, how many swaps are there, or whatever it might be. This is obviously a bit of a generalization, but that's often a good proxy for like how big is my job. Almost kind of like, how many needles do I need to find? How big is the haystack, right? Maybe you can think of it like that. And often it's not so easy to tell how big of much of a job it is, because in order to figure out how much of a big job it is, you almost need to go ahead and do the entire indexing and the entire work. And only once it's done, then okay, this is how much of a big job it was. So sometimes it's difficult to, upfront figure out beforehand, like, is there a way for me to approximate how big it might be? And to cut a long story short, chain density is kind of just a bit of a fun tool that we've put together that essentially tries to help you figure out an approximation for how big that task is. So you see a contract address, and for example, you wanted to know how many logs that address has emitted. You put it in there, and it's not actually decoding the logs or differentiating the logs, or doing any of the useful things you would actually normally need to do to make sense of the information. It's purely just like figuring out the count, which means it can do it a lot quicker. And it kind of draws this graph. Okay, you're indexing Arbitrum, there's 370 million blocks. This smart contract here's like a graph showing you how many logs have been created over that 370 million block range. And it just kind of gives you this idea of, okay, it's 1 million logs. There's quite a few logs in the beginning. Then there's, not much for a very long period of time. And I think, again, this is why, like, we probably like to talk more about events per second than blocks per second, because you could have like 50 million blocks and there's not much actually happening. And then the next 50 million blocks, there's a lot happening. So I like to use the word event density. Basically, like in this range of blocks, you can't just assume there's like this equal distribution of information. Almost like if you were searching your way through this long line of a haystack, there might be like a lot of needles, then there's nothing for a long time, then there's a lot of needles. So anyways, yeah, I think it's a cool tool that you can go play around with. Chain density.xyz. So
Yeah,
that's
and
not
it
AI
seems
related, unfortunately, but
very
it's
helpful.
there.
It seems very, very useful when you're trying to build some sort of business proposal and stuff like that, when you know what kind of scope of work you're going to have. And sounds like a cool use case.
Even just like one interesting thing is you want to see like, how many transactions is USDC actually having, and
Yeah.
you can kind of get a sense for, oh my word, there's more happening than there used to be. Like you can spot some trends or estimate your indexing effort. Again, it's not going to change your life or give you all of the alpha, but it can give some cool anecdotal points.
Nice. I would love to integrate that into Twitter feed to just get these updates on what's going on.
It's a good idea.
Oh, so sorry, Alex.
Oh no, I kind of wanted to add onto John John's point. I love charts. I love like when you can visualize all these things. For example, one thing that I was actually playing with this the other day. I was just trying to kind of like, because I was playing with Solana data as well, so I was like I was just playing around, and what's really crazy is that like you have all this data, so like let's say I used Soldex, to ingest all this stuff, but what was really cool for me is that just I opened up Claude or Copilot. I opened up Copilot and I was like, hey, do like, can you tell me which days have like the most trading volume? And it's like yeah, here's the SQL query to like get this information. And I'm like, okay, can we visualize it? And it's like, yeah, sure. Just install some Python stuff, right? Some visualization packages. And I was like, okay, can you like draw it? can you display it? And it just like prints out like a little image in my directory. I'm like, oh, cool. So like it just like visualized it, like it styled it for me. I was like, okay, that's sick. That's actually really, really cool. So you don't even need to like, you don't even need to like build the whole application display. And it's really nice to have like obviously like real time, like this visual data. It looks really cool. But even if you have like, if you ingest this data set and you just ask it questions like, hey, can you tell me what's happening, right? And you just chat in English, you can see the tables, you can see the data that you've ingested, right? And it will design it for you, so maybe you have some graphs and stuff. So like that's actually like a cool use case for like ChatGPT, I think.
Yeah, sounds good.
To add on to that, which I think was such a cool point, how great is it with AI that you don't have to spend so much time fiddling with CSS and like make things look pretty and drawing. Like, it was never my favorite thing to do, and I was never the best at making things like look good and drawing charts and this and that. So I'm totally with you there. It's so nice to have AI like do a lot of that for you.
Yeah, it's just deducts. It just finds out like what the shape of your data is, and it just does it. And it's like, I find it like, wow, that's magical. Like I don't have to think. I didn't have to manually extract all this information or like run it through some program. It's just like, I understood, and it's like, wow, there you go. This is your data.
And I think it even uses better Python libraries, because when I used to visualize data using Python, it came out absolutely rubbish. It wasn't looking as good as it does now. But okay, if we fast forward a couple of years and think that AI is changing core business models of indexes, because, well, you have to start thinking about changing a business model, probably because now indexes are traditionally priced around queries, throughput, SLAs, stuff like that. And if AI agents start hitting you with millions of micro queries, how does that reshape pricing? Do you charge per query, per agent, or something else?
We have what we focus on is the extraction. So the extraction is the kind of like the valuable thing that you have these data sets and you extract the data from them, and that's like the valuable thing. So because you control a database, you can deploy it to AWS, you can deploy it to Railway, I don't know, any kind of solution. And you can use, obviously we have a cloud solution, so sqd Cloud, where you pay for compute. So obviously you can use that to basically shape, depending on your traffic, optimize for your needs. yeah, I do think is going to be a huge issue, like in the future, where I predict like the agents will be. I mean, they're already bombarding the websites, right? They're already like doing crazy traffic to static pages. So, and it is an issue. Well, it's not an issue. I mean, depends who you are, right? But but I would say that for it's going to be the same for like data sources as well, and um, yeah, I think there are lots of really when it comes to payment and API usage, like you see like Coinbase pushing these new payment methods and Stripe, and everyone is kind of adapting to the new agent economy. But yeah, but the other thing is like you do want to optimize you as a developer who indexes the data, you want to optimize it for the reads. So the reads are going to go up, right? So you want to make sure that you have some cache, some scaling solution and such, or maybe use a database that is more optimized for reads. For example, you might want to use ClickHouse, right? That's like a little bit more optimal for reads, or you may want to use something else, right? Redis. But yeah, I would say it's just like everyone has to tackle this problem. Yeah.
How about you, John?
Sure, yeah. I mean, if the agents are hammering you, you might need to have a little bit of good old-fashioned whitelisting on something to stop them hammering you. But yeah, I think like the whole pricing thing, I'm sure everyone will tell you it's never like super straightforward to have absolutely perfect pricing. And I think that's just always going to hold true because of the nature of what we do. Everyone's use case is relatively different traffic, different storing, this, that, the next thing. I think it's impossible to have something that's perfect. I think you just got to be open to iterating and improving on what you currently have, and yeah, be open to how things might change. Maybe as you're saying with agents, there's going to be way more queries, and that might be a bigger part of things in the future. I don't know. I'm still not maybe convinced that that's the case, but yeah, I think indexes will continue to change and evolve, and an indexer can be a bit of a means to an end. At the end of the day, you want a good API, say, for your application, right? Maybe you don't even care so much how that API is implemented, handled, anything at all. You just want something there, right? So maybe agents are going to be more involved in creating that for you, and you won't even have to be that involved in that process. So thoughts.
Yeah. And if we are talking about predictions, what do you think by the end of next year, for example, what AI feature will most Web3 data teams expect from any indexer by default?
Yeah, I would say
If any, yeah.
I would say I think it would be a good expectation to being able to handle fast chains. I think this is still like a huge. I know we're talking about AI, but you're not really going to achieve anything without the fundamentals, right? You need fast speed. You need to be able to handle all these new chains. You need to be open enough to integrate all these features. You need to be open enough to integrate into the new world of agents and such. And yeah, it's a matter of, I think, indexing kind of has to get out of the way. And John mentioned like developer experience is also super important, right? You have to have tools that basically they're helping you. You don't have to fight your tools, basically, right, to achieve what you need to do. If you need to access IPFS, you don't have all these like crazy restrictions on you. So yeah, I would say that yeah, I would say that these are kind of like the fundamental things, and just having something that sits in your toolkit. It's not something separate that you need to basically run in a separate instance. Maybe if you want to run your indexer with your AI like endpoint, right? So you can do that with both of our solutions, right? If you want to write something custom, yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with all of that. And, maybe the thing I'd add that people would expect is I think developers by nature can be quite lazy and want to do less a lot of the time. So perhaps having AI being able to more easily do a lot of the indexer code stuff like that for you. Maybe that's an expectation. Beforehand, maybe people were having to put in a lot more elbow grease to, configure things and get it right and this and that. And maybe the expectation is just that it's much quicker to get things set up, working, running, written. And maybe it's less involved. Previously you maybe needed 2 weeks to write a good index, and now maybe people think it should be 2 days. So yeah, I think AI will continue to be used quite a lot throughout the entire stack and through building them.
Yeah, but if we are talking about AI features within the indexers, then maybe it's more of a outsourced kind of work, not something that the indexers themselves should focus on in the first place, right? So the main infra part, the speed and the performance and other things like how fast a developer can build the first thing with your chain or with your indexer is maybe most important things to concentrate on.
Yeah, I would say indexer's prime role is to extract data from a data set and put it in your ETL, right? It doesn't really care about what kind of data you're indexing, but obviously, like on-chain data is like if you have like a solution that is optimized for ingestion of your data set, then yeah, obviously this is kind of like its prime job. And as John said, like developer experience, what it means is that you want this process to get out of the way so that you can focus on actual like meaningful stuff. Yeah, if you're storing, for example, vectors or something, it would be nice to kind of like get those as well as as well as the on-chain data. And but it's one of those things where it's like it's a custom solution. We know what the chain looks like, and we can design a tool that's optimal for extraction of this data, right? We don't really know what agents look like. The agent data is once there's more particularization, maybe we can have a different conversation where agent-specific data is baked into the actual indexing protocol, if it makes sense, but only if it actually makes sense to kind of like combine this data together, right? Otherwise, it's better to just let developers build, get out of the way. I completely agree. Make sure that the setup process is just like a couple of days. Well, I mean, you basically get the data as soon as possible, and you don't have to worry about it. That's like our job, as quickly as fast, etc. But the external, like the other side, the other part is just creativity. I don't think indexing is like getting like particular logs is a super creative process. What is actually creative is what you build on top of it, right? So whether it's the dashboard, whether it's an AI agent, whether it's some other tool, it's this is where you express yourself as a developer. This is where you express what you want to build, right? So everything else is kind of like maintenance, I would say, but I don't know.
Yeah, but essential things. And we are close to the end of the panel, and I wanted to end with a quick lightning round. So, could you name one feature you'll ship in the next 6 months that changes how teams query chain data?
What do you mean by that? It's how it changed.
Anything extraordinary you're working on and gonna ship in the next 6 months?
Yeah, anything extraordinary in terms of extracting data. I genuinely think that there is like there are a lot of developers out there that still kind of rely on the old school like RPC model where they ingest the data and they process it the old school way where they search for logs and etc. Right? And I think that model is kind of like I don't think it's optimal personally. I think it's fine like if you need to make on-chain calls and such, but for actual extraction and like visualization and such, I strongly suggest trying out like these optimized dataset based options because it's just the performance, the developer experience, like we said, is just going to be like like a day and night, right? Yeah, I think it's kind of like if to address because I have a suspicion that people that use Subsquid, Envio, a lot of them are quite happy with what they're able to achieve nowadays, right? They can definitely be optimizations that we optimization that we can do to make the experience better. But I think also like what's really important for indexes is kind of maintain consistency because it's a developer toolkit, right? So you can't really change things too much or like throw too many like new ideas and like see what sticks. One of the reasons like people like using old indexers is because it's like they're pretty consistent in terms of their interface. So that's also like kind of like a good developer experience, I would argue. So we definitely need to kind of yeah we kind of have like this philosophy and just expanding on top of it and improving the product. I think is really important. But if anyone is still using RPC based solutions, I definitely think it's a good idea to try out something new and see if you like it.
Yeah, totally. Good advice. What about you, John? Can you tease any new developments?
I'll give a shout out to something we released 2 days ago, I guess. It's in our latest version of Hyperindex, I think v2.29.0. But basically, we just introduced block handlers, which essentially a lot of the indexing in Hyperindex before was based on event-driven infrastructure. So, every time an event is emitted, that triggers a process, blah, blah, blah. But the on block handler kind of allows you to, in the Hyperindex framework itself, make indexing slightly more flexible. You can, perform API calls every 1,000 blocks, or it opens, I'd say, a lot more doors and the flexibility of what you can do within that Hyperindex framework, indexing not just based on events. So yeah, I think that's literally just been 2 days old, and we've had a lot of people requesting that. So it's now out there in the wild, and would love for people to give that a go. Lots more obviously in store, but yeah, that's the thing I want to highlight.
Of course, nice. And continuing the lightning round, any misconception about AI plus indexing you want dead? Maybe something that we said today that was an awful misconception.
No, nothing crazy on my end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alex?
Sorry, what was the question? The AI.
So, can you think of any misconception that you maybe heard concerning AI plus data indexing that you want completely dead so that people stop talking about it? That's just awful and untrue.
I can't think of much.
Okay.
I would say I don't think I actually heard any misconceptions. People kind of like indexing is indexing, AI is AI. So yeah, I would say that's kind of yeah. I mean, yeah, not much.
Okay. And last couple of stupid questions. First, what's your go-to night snack when everything breaks at 3 a.m.?
Yo, I will say I do have a soft spot for 2-minute noodles.
Oh,
It's easy, boil it, boil, hot water. It's a go-to.
yeah, popular with a lot of developers. What about you, Alex?
Late night. Um,
What are we talking about here?
Good question. No, it's fine. It's fine. I mean, maybe there's some yogurt in the fridge or something. I don't know. You can't. Yeah. Nothing too heavy because you gotta like debug, right? So yeah, I don't know. I mean, snacks, obviously, like maybe crisps or something, right? That's that's usually a good one. I can't think of anything exciting. It's 3 a.m. You're gonna grab the first thing that comes to your like mind. So is this chocolate? Okay, I'll eat that.
Okay. And the last question, what's your favorite Web3 project? You can chill.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll maybe give a shout out to Sablia. I think they're a cool money streaming protocol. They got nice website, nice UX, and I think it's cool smart contracts they have. I like it. So yeah, shout out to them.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think. It's a protocol. I don't really have favorites in that regard. I do, yeah. I mean, if in terms of shilling, I guess like shout out to sqd.ai team for building. The stuff they've been building is pretty incredible. Other than that, yeah, I think there's a lot of cool stuff that's being built. Just we see use cases that are like incredible all the time, and yeah, I would say especially like when it comes to AI, like all AI projects, just like the stuff that they've been doing is like fantastic. Every time we see like an AI project doing something cool with like on-chain data, it's just like wow, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. It was so wonderful to have you here on this panel. And I hope all the viewers are going to check out Envio and Subsquid projects and try out their indexes for themselves and maybe mix and match and maybe build AI agents on top. Let's experiment and see how we can move this AI and index mix forward. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks.
We should do it more often. I liked it.
Of course. Yeah, I'd love that. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Cheers. Have a nice day.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.